Okay, good morning, everyone on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you are seeing us. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Blank in Experiential Outdoor Hospitality. Every Wednesday, I come to you through Talk About TV. I am your host, Michelle Oliver, and we just try to share something that you may not be aware of that could really benefit you in your experiential outdoor hospitality adventure. Let's call it an adventure, okay? Because everybody's having one as you build your business. It might be a mom and pop, it might be a REIT. Like everybody needs to know what they don't know. And I'm super excited today to be here with Greg Emmert. And Greg, I'm just going to welcome you. I appreciate you being here, and I'm going to invite you to just share a little bit about who you are and why are we having this conversation today.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me on. I've watched you guys for a while and it's a lot of fun. I love your approach to it, what you don't know about, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
what a great way to launch into a topic that to maybe somebody doesn't know about, right? You don't have to be an expert or feel like you're an expert to tune into your show. And so I think that's great. I am the co-founder and a senior strategist at Camp Strategy. We're a consulting firm that helps outdoor hospitality businesses scale, grow, become more efficient. We can help folks that are looking for that next asset, do their due diligence and get a proper valuation. Really, we're an end-to-end solution between great partnerships that we have in the industry. Um, we can help you from finding raw land and designing it all the way out the other side to writing your SOPs and getting you up and running. And I got into that because I was the owner of the Homerville KOA. My family, my parents and I, we owned the Homerville KOA, and believe me, the town is as big
That
and
is
and
so
it's
such a cute name. I'm sorry,
it.
I'm going to interrupt you.
No,
That
it
just
was it.
sounds
We used to
so
get so many compliments on it. It was a single intersection. There is a U.S. post office there. It's a single car
okay.
garage converted into a post office. And I think it was in 2018, we got a flashing light. So I mean, it was astonishingly. I mean, we came right into the
Wow.
19th century
Quaint.
at that point. Yeah.
Quaint and
Um,
charming.
Yes, very much. We had our neighbors were soybeans, corn, and the Yoder family. So we really had it was
I
great.
love
It was
that.
really quiet and lovely. My parents bought it in 94 and we were there for 26 years owning and
Oh,
operating
wow.
that together. Sold it in 2020, so sold my job. Luckily, the folks that I sold it to bought a bunch of campgrounds that year and were new to the space and needed some
Ah,
help. So brought me back in as
perfect.
a consultant slash project manager, and I did that for a while. And then my partner Jeff, who probably 90% of your viewers out there know Jeff Hoffman. Jeff was consulting, I was consulting, and he contacted me and said, maybe we join forces. We have complementary
Okay.
skill sets, and so here we are. We are now Camp Strategy, and it's been a lot of fun. Um, Helping people succeed is just awesome. It's great. I didn't think it was going to be, it's stressful for sure. It's stressful to own your own business because you're on the hook for everything. But if you screw up, you answer to you. If I goof now, I have a whole bunch of people who are writing the check, right? Like there's much more pressure now, but we just don't goof. We serve our customers well, and yeah, I don't think we've got any one-star reviews yet. God, I hope not. But it's been great. It's been really, really
Hope
great.
is not a strategy. It doesn't
That's
fit into,
thank you for
but that's
clarifying.
really cute.
That's true.
No, so I just want to interject here and share. It's wonderful what you just shared because something that is really lovely about at least what I've noticed so far in the experiential outdoor hospitality space is people really are very generous and collaborative.
Oh yeah.
So, people reach out like Jeff did to you, and then you have a greater offering. We're very service oriented people. Hospitality
Yep.
is all about being generous and working together and seeing the vision and so you're walking that path, and I really love that. When we think about what people don't know perhaps about their operations, is there something that you've realized, like kind of a realization that you've come to in the years that you've been doing this?
So the the biggest realization for me, and I surmise it actually, it's in my email signature. This quote is shared in every email I send, and I have it tacked around the house and on my desk. And the biggest thing that I've learned is, you hear the terms, the phrase, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you try to
Yes,
learn, you
right.
try to always be learning, always be growing. But the more you learn, the more you realize there's still so much more to learn. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is a favorite. He's such a great science communicator. Um, he has this quote where he once said that as the area of our knowledge grows, so too does the perimeter of our ignorance. Because as that area gets bigger, the perimeter gets bigger. So there's still, no matter how much you learn, there is an ever expanding world that you still need to learn about. And I
Yes.
think that's what I've learned most. I thought, boy, I've been at this consulting thing for 4 or 5 years now. I still have so much more to learn. There's still so much more that I have to get tacked away up here. And it's never ending. And I think that sometimes is difficult to explain to our clients. Like you might think that this is where you need to be. This is where you are now. This is where you need to be. Once you get here, boy, you better still be looking at this, and then after that at this, and it's not necessarily uh, financially. I don't necessarily mean your bottom line or your top line number. I mean you as a person. Like
Yeah.
you had better understand that if you don't continue to grow, continue to add to your knowledge base, continue to add to your skill set, you're going to be stuck falling backwards really, really fast. So I think that is the biggest thing that I have learned, both about myself, the industry, our clients, is that the tough sell sometimes is that you may have learned a lot, you may have solved for X. Now it's time to go solve for Y and be looking for Z because it's coming too. So I think that is probably the biggest thing that I've learned. Yeah, is just to stay humble and keep learning all the time.
You articulated that so beautifully, Greg.
I've never been
And
accused of that. Thank you.
I cannot agree with you more. I think I guess I've always perceived business as a vehicle for personal growth because I've had so many
For
different
sure.
types of businesses. And then how do you and it's a vehicle for service and serving your team first and like all that kind of stuff. But what you said strikes me as particularly powerful in this industry because I have a business partner, as you know, who's been in outdoor hospitality for 30 plus years. I've been in hospitality and a bunch of other different businesses. So when I came in, and I kind of was shocked, honestly, and I continue to be at how archaic the thinking tends to be because
Yes.
people will have what they call a win. Hey, I did this, I bought this park, and then I made it better, and then I'm doing great. And I mean, that is great, and I applaud that. And yet, that's just the beginning. That's
Yeah.
just the beginning. You can't then go out and just duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. That is being the same again and again and again.
Yes.
So, what you are speaking of when you come in with this vision and and when you are that way, that's who you are and that's how you operate in the world. That is the biggest gift you're giving to these people, right? So, they think they're hiring you for like bottom line increase. It's all about ADR or it's about packing them in. And so,
Yeah.
how do you take this big, beautiful paradigm? Because we're kind of needing to shift a whole paradigm
Yeah.
and then apply it in concrete ways strategically for your clients.
So I tell you, that is a challenge because not everybody thinks, and you and your partner, Randy, is great. I feel like he and Dr. Tyson could get on and I would just sit and listen to the two of them back and forth because they have these big aspirational ideas and they get into the philosophical. That's where, I don't know if I want to use the word truth, but that's where maybe I do want to use the word truth. That's where the truth lies. You need to understand who you are and what you want to build, your why, right? Like I'm not trying to sell a Simon Sinek book, I swear to God, but I really buy into his thinking that if you don't have your why clearly defined and make that drive everything that you do, you're going to have a difficult time because to your point, the, ADR and top line numbers and bottom line numbers and reducing my expenses, yes, that applies, but that can be really antiquated thinking. And if you drive everything that you do from your why, from your position of why am I doing what I do, the rest of that should follow. If you have a solid base, so we have like I have a purpose paper, sure, try to say that again. Purpose paper template, right? That I'll send to clients that are struggling with this. Well, what do you mean why? Well, I do this to make money. Okay, but that's not really a why. Like that should be, to me, the profit is a side effect, right? And this is not my original idea, of course, right? But
Yeah.
profit is a side effect of a well-run business. You run your business right, you attract and retain customers, profit should follow in a well-run business. So I try to get them on course with this purpose paper template, and it tries to get them to define why. But boy, if they're a different personality type, that is a struggle to get through that because it asks fairly existential questions about who you are, why you're doing what you do, what your values are. So I use that to try to align them. And then, I just talk to people, just like what you're doing here, what you do on your show, which is why I think it's so great. You talk to people, and when you start a conversation, people reveal things about themselves that maybe they didn't even know. They say it out loud, and you go, "Hey, wait, there's a little tidbit there. Can we go back and talk about that?" And they'll look at you like you're talking a different language, but they're the ones that said it, right? So it's easy then to get into it. So yeah, actively listening, getting them talking, try to get them thinking about the why. That's typically how I dive into it. But it can definitely be a struggle with someone who's of a different personality. You get somebody who's very left-brained and analytical, and it can be really hard for them to articulate that kind of stuff.
Welcome to being a woman in a world of men.
I love it. Oh, that's great.
I
That
mean,
is great.
I never noticed it as much, to be honest. I've never noticed it really at all until I got into this industry because I've always just plowed
Interesting.
ahead. I've built my own teams. I built everything on vision alone and pulled everything into that. And I've always had teams that refused to go home when I couldn't pay them, that kind of thing, because there
Wow.
was a passion, a purpose, and I was serving them, and then they served. So, but when I got into this industry, it's just so funny because when Randy and I were consulting together, I put together this whole 90-day personal development program for our clients. So we would do all the strategy and the numbers and all the stuff. And at the same time, I'm taking them through values, vision,
There you
all that
go.
stuff, which I've been doing since I was 29. And I guess that's the last time I faced men. I remember working at United Airlines and I was like 29 years old and trying to teach these VPs about vision.
Oh
And they're
my.
all very stoic and,
Hmm.
but one guy cried in that session, and that was what
Wow.
allowed me the courage to go because there's always going to be somebody that's going. Here's what I think, and I really want this to be about you, but this is my passion to talk about. I think when people like our culture does not really allow for us to be genuine about what's going on. We mask it, we cover it up, we're strong, we're creating a business, damn it, not a fluffy kind of thing. And
Yep.
so when you touch that in someone, that's what's going to become the driver, as you know, of their
Yep.
business. And it's worth the effort. It's worth being rejected again and again and again. It's worth being told, oh, how is that going to help me? Like I'm from Harvard, especially dealing with a Harvard. I love Harvard, by the way, and I have friends who went to Harvard, but they come as like, we know the answer, and they're looking at it from that perspective, and then you're bringing this in. So I'm curious about three things actually. One, how do you overcome that obstacle? And well, that's probably enough of a question first, and then I'll ask the other two if that's
For
okay.
for as much as I talk, that probably is enough. Yeah, I don't want to take up your whole show with it. It's hard. I don't have a single way to do it. I typically do it through just listening, and getting on site and walking a property or getting into a position where that client feels comfortable. So meeting them on their turf, not having them to, a neutral site to meet, or doing it like this, right? There's nothing wrong. I
Yeah.
love this one thing that came out of the pandemic that I absolutely love is how accepted this form of communication is. And it's great. I can still see you and I can still read some signals, but it's not the same. That getting in
No.
front of someone, and especially on their turf, where they're much more likely to let their guard down and speak freely, maybe walking their property with them, going out to the glamping tents if they've got glamping, or walk in the park and having them show you some of their pinch and pain points, then the conversation can open up, and then maybe they feel more comfortable. That has been the number one way that I find that I can break through. And some people, to your point, those stuffy suits, some people can't be broken through. They just want to say, well, how much are you going to increase my revenue? And if you can't tell me that, then, get out. I got 5 more calls today. Okay. We might not be able to work together because my brain doesn't work like that. Right. I, again, see that as a side effect. But if I can get in touch with, it's why I love working with, I'm not going to say anything that is going to disqualify certain people from working with me, right? If you own 100 parks, please call me at Camp Strategy. I would love to work with you. But working with the mom and pops, the solopreneurs, right? The 1 or 2 park owners that are doing what I did. They're living it. They've got all the hats on. They're owning and operating, right? Those people, and they're the ones that can be really hesitant to lean into it. But boy, if I get them out on their place and I can get them talking, things just start to open up. And then you can really start that rapport. And I think a lot of it has to do with people are guarded, of course, right? I mean, naturally, to your point, our culture, we don't necessarily allow ourselves to just open up to the first person we meet, even if we're potentially talking about allowing them to make some changes to our business for us, which is what people, it takes a great amount of trust for someone to
Yeah.
hire us and then take the advice that we're giving them, especially if it's, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and you're telling me I've been doing it wrong. No, I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong. I'm saying we can find a better way. We can take some pressure off of you, right? You have to, it's the way you communicate it, but it takes a lot of trust for that. So sometimes they just don't want to open up, but it's all about watching and listening, watching that body language and listening for little openings. And maybe you get the idea that Bob wants to talk about it, but Sherry doesn't. And so Sherry takes a call and you kind of welcome Bob in and say, Bob, share that with me a little bit. Communication is the key to everything. So
Yes,
that's
it
typically
is.
how I get them going, get them talking and get them on their home turf.
I love that.
Yeah.
Listening and
Yeah.
getting them talking. I think one of the beautiful things about experiential hospitality is that even from a business perspective, that's included. Like we're understanding and evaluating and trying to figure out how to give the guests the very best experience. So in doing so, you've got to get out of yourself. You've got to
Yeah.
start embracing, the emotional. It's all about how are you making them feel? How do they
Yeah.
feel when they go to your website? How do they feel? The whole thing that we talk about all the time. So I think that can be a pathway, kind of a way to bridge the left brain to the right brain because it does tie directly to revenue. And
Yeah.
absolutely, and you're good at doing that. I know from our conversations and watching you. Okay, I'm going to totally flip a little bit into the other brain. Talk a little bit, if you would, about conservation. This is also a topic that everybody is talking about, sustainability, and it too has become a buzzword that can just be thrown on a website like we're green. Well, okay, so what's
Yeah.
your perspective on that?
Okay. Oh my gosh. And I love that you use the word perspective, because perspective is everything, right? Perception is the lens that we view reality through, but
That's right.
perspective informs that. So you and I can look at the same thing and completely disagree on what it is. You see red, I see green. But once we realize that you're 100 feet over there and I'm right on top of it, oh, we can shift perspectives and we can try to get in the middle. And now we
Exactly.
might see it more closely. I love that you transitioned it that way. That's beautiful. Conservation to me is the why behind the sustainability and the green issues. Conservation is what allows you to take those because, to your point, anybody can tack up a buzzword. Anybody can put it
Right.
on there. So we're a green park. We have sustainability, programs at our park. Well, what do? Oh, we recycle.
Yeah.
All right, meat. So do I at my curb. Come on, let's put some meat on that. What is that? Why do you recycle? Well, because we believe, and then everything after that. Now you have a powerful statement. That's what conservation is to me. And so you asked me to talk a little about conservation. You will have to cut me off because this is
Okay.
absolutely who I am. I am a conservationist from the time I was uh, breathing. My parents were big into the outdoors. They took me camping. They allowed me to do all the stuff that a kid wants to. I never got reprimanded for getting filthy playing in a creek or turning over rocks or catching a cup full of worms so I could go fishing. I None of that. They let that side just develop, and it has become that's me to the core. I'm a birder. I will talk your head off about birds if you let me. And I believe that we all have this responsibility to ourselves and to everything else that shares the planet with us to leave it better than we found it. And so conservation is the why behind all those practices. It's the why you recycle, it's the why you use the LED light bulbs. It's not so you can tack it up on your website. It's so you can conserve. And really important, I think, to note really quickly conservation versus preservation. So I do believe in preservation as well, but there's a difference, right? If somebody said conservation is the responsible use of a resource. So if somebody said, I'm going to conserve water, well, it doesn't mean they're never going to use it again. It means they might put low flow shower heads on and low flusher on the toilet and not, plant landscaping that requires you to water it with hundreds of gallons every day. You're going to conserve it. You're going to use it responsibly. Whereas preservation is you don't touch it, you leave it alone, you never use it, right? So through conservation, I want to encourage outdoor hospitality business owners to realize, and this plays right back to as you were talking before, I'm like, we have awesome segue. You mentioned the experiential part. There is no better experiential vehicle than Mother Nature. None.
Yeah, I
It has been
agree.
proven scientifically. You can take somebody outside, you can bring them to your park. And this is how I used to try to differentiate my park because I was a KOA and I thought, gosh, family goes on a road trip, they stay at, I don't know, 5 or 6 KOAs. When they get home, what do they remember? They were yellow shirts everywhere. The cabins have a certain look. There's a jumping pillow, there's a pool. Maybe they do a tie-dye activity or whatever. They do that at all of them. So how in the world do I set myself apart? I was fortunate to have some big natural spaces at my park, but you don't have to have those. But I thought, gosh, I love it, right? I love conservation. It's a part of who I am. So I get to there's my why. I get to put that into the business. And I started to move portions of our property into reclaimed meadows and secondary growth forest and manage those areas for that, develop hiking trails. And I used that to connect with my guests. And it did not take very long before I was starting to see a shift in the customer type, in the experience that they were looking for, and the base of fans that I developed so quickly because again, you can jump on a jump pad. It's going to be the same as every other jump pad. But if I take you out in the field at night and we set up a moth sheet and then we go out in the field and I say, what you sitting around your campfire, hear all those background noises that makes it so sweet? Come with me. I'm going to take you guys out here and I'm going to show you those little critters, the insects, the katydids, the crickets, and I'm going to show you how they sing. And we're going to get them, you're going to hold them in your hand and you're going to watch them rub their little combs together and sing. Where else did you do that on your trip? And who else took you to do that? Boy, instant connection. People remember it and the feeling that it creates, man, they're connected to your park. They're connected to you. You just earned a guest, possibly in perpetuity, because they're never going to forget that experience. So, yeah, you said a little bit. I'm sorry. I may have gone a little bit further there.
No, I
I
like
can keep
that.
going. Yeah,
I get
I
it.
love it.
It's wonderful. I
It
love
is.
it too. I really understand everything that you're saying. And it does tie, as you mentioned, directly to your revenue. It also
Yep.
becomes the story, the narrative you can use in your marketing and the Instagrammable things, all of it
Yeah.
plays into that right there. People just want to know themselves, and nature allows you to do that, like to
Oh,
experience yourself differently. I love the story that you shared about growing up in nature, and I was the same way. Like my mom was that way, so I was that way with my kids. Like there's they grew up in a river basically, surrounded by wilderness, because you learn, you grow, you get to move, you have relationships. I mean, it solves so many problems.
it does.
And when people are looking for, okay, they're driving down the road, what are we going to do? How are we going to stimulate ourselves? How are we going to entertain ourselves? And then you open up this doorway to the simplest solution and the most delightful education. Like it's all built in. And
It is.
people are afraid of it though. And so
Yes.
back to trust and the fact that you're like, take here, I'll take your hand and let's go have this experience. I think that's brilliant.
It is. And it is it's the vehicle to gain their trust because honestly, I was really surprised when I started doing this that like the most citified, if that's a word, the most citified of my guests, the ones that would like,
Definitely a word.
okay,
It's a
okay,
word.
they would call the front desk and be like, there's a snake on my campsite and I'm afraid I can't go outside, petrified. I saw a spider. What do I do? Will it, bite me and eat me tonight while I'm sleeping? They would be the ones joining me. They would be the
Yeah.
ones out in the meadow because with another person there, guiding them thoughtfully and sharing the knowledge and the experience, they felt the trust. They didn't feel like
Yes.
they had to be scared of it. Whereas, if they're on their own walking around, I don't know what that thing is. I don't know, are there venomous snakes here? Are there venomous spiders? And no, it's Northeast Ohio. It's incredibly, incredibly easy to go out and walk anywhere you want, apart from bee sting, mosquito bite, and some poison ivy. Like you're not going to get into anything rough in Northeast Ohio. It's very, very easy to get out and enjoy nature. Um, but those guests would come away from it even more touched by it because they got to
Right.
experience it. They got to alleviate their fears, even just for a moment, and see it for what it is. And every park has it. Even if you're in an urban park, you could make some small planting beds and attract hummingbirds and butterflies. If you only have a few trees, you could educate people about those trees. You don't have to have, I was very fortunate. We had a lot of open space and I realized that, and not every park has that, but you can lean into it with just a tiny little garden or two.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you don't have to
Yeah.
have big open areas. You don't have to have a creek or a river, or you can lean into it with tiny little spaces. It's all about how you communicate it, how you sell it, how you market it. And yeah, people just want to follow. Every campground has outdoors. I mean, what the
Yeah.
outdoors looks like at your place, I'm not sure, right? You might have to manipulate some things, but it doesn't have to be high dollar. And I think that's another thing that's great about it. As you mentioned, it affects your bottom line. People are always looking for new activities, right? And those activities, okay, well, what's the cost of that activity? How many people do I need to employ to put it on? What are the supplies? What's the time, right? Well, my supplies are just outside. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
You could buy. I was fortunate enough. I would. I'm very fortunate to have a wife who works for the Ohio Division of Wildlife. Hi, babe. But because of her, I knew of the resources I had so it wasn't like I got special treatment, but they had things like traveling trunks that were centered around an activity. So when I was going to do
Yeah.
the creek survey, right, I would go pick up the trunk, sign it out, use it for a weekend, use it for the education, take it right back. I could borrow binoculars when I wanted to take people on a bird walk. There's all kinds of stuff available to you through your Division of Wildlife, local soil and water conservation districts, park systems. You all sorts of we had an astronomer come out, and he was just a guy with a giant telescope who loved to do this stuff. I paid him in Mountain Dew and gas money, and honest to God, he's like,
That's
because
hilarious.
he would say, he's like, I'm going to be here till midnight. Just bring me a 6-pack of Mountain Dew so I can stay awake and cover my gas. done. Don, you're the greatest guy ever. And he would throw up his telescope and keep my guests entertained till sometimes I would wake up and get a glass of water and look out and it's 2 in the morning and he's still out there with just like two people. Now you find a local
And
astronomy
they
club
are
and
never gonna, I'm sorry to
oh
interrupt, but
no, you're please.
those two people are never gonna forget that. Well,
Yep,
all of them, but especially those two. And you
ever.
have no, this is the thing that people forget to think about. You have no idea how much revenue those two individuals are driving, especially if you have a strategy in place to get their, like, get them on video talking about it, get a
Yep.
testimonial or whatever. It kind of reminds me of all the um I had a business in Estes Park near Rocky Mountain National Park,
Oh
and
wow.
I've been, and so my kids, when we moved up there from where we were before in Pagosa, we were just always attending the what do you call them, the ranger
Yeah,
programs.
ranger program,
And
sure. The interpretive programs at the park. Yep,
yeah, so you could literally look at what they're doing and get ideas. This is the type of thing you're talking about. It doesn't cost anything. As a matter of fact, you can sell merch for it.
yep,
Bird watching books, journals, nature, botanical. Like, I mean, you can use that as a template for your little park wherever you are. People
absolutely.
love that. And then they have memories. Like, it's just so logical, but
It is.
people do forget these little things that drive all, that's what you are. That is your brand,
Yep.
right? So,
Absolutely. And to take that even a step further, when I was doing it, I didn't have things like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude. I didn't
right.
have AI. You could easily go into ChatGPT or any of the AI, the open language, the big language models, and say, I own this campground. This is where I am. These are the resources I have available to me. What might be some interpretive programs or some educational programs based on conservation, based on nature that I could build here at my campground? And in 5 seconds, you're going to have a list that you wouldn't believe, and away you go. You
It's
don't, it
brilliant.
doesn't have to be
So
complicated.
easy.
It doesn't, it is, it's so easy and it's so low cost. And the
Yeah.
amount of people participating in conservation and wildlife watching, it is astonishing. If you haven't seen, I'm trying to look at, it's a really terrible acronym. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Survey, um, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Survey that they put out every 6 or 7 years. And it looks at the economic benefit of the conservation economy. And it's
Ah,
astonishing.
lovely.
It's grown 200% since the last time they did the
Wow.
survey. So they just put it out in 2022. And I'm trying to find you some, yeah, since 2016, it's grown 200%. And that's comprised of people that just like make a butterfly garden in their backyard or mega nerds like me who are going to like drive cross country to see 30 new bird species and it takes into account for my travel and my lodging and but what is the outdoor hospitality industry experience? It's travel, it's lodging, it's RV
Yeah.
purchases, it's spending on glamping. That's all captured in this report. And it's it's over $100 billion a year. I think birding alone contributes like $86 billion a year. Just birders like me. There are more birders in the United States than there are golfers. And the economic impact of those birders crushes I have nothing against golf. I don't mean I
Seriously.
don't mean to
How
poo-poo golfers. Yeah.
so you mean like in buying, like buying bird seed and stuff? Like what are they just
So
going on like events where you all go? I used to do that with, honestly, sometimes I think everything I did when I was homeschooling my kids and a number of other people's kids, that's all you're doing. It's like unit studies. You know, we'd go
yes,
watch the cranes come into southern Colorado, or you just put up different bird feeders and start studying their patterns, and it
you got it.
becomes, it's so fun. And then they have the cameras, and so I think, how is the economic, is it, are they paying for these events or What
So
I know there are bird stores that you can go buy all kinds of, and
and
then
so
you want to buy
just
the t-shirt, right? Which
yeah,
you can
right.
sell at your campground. I
It goes
saw
and
this
I'm
crane at this campground.
I'm
You're
honestly
wearing one right
surprised.
now.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that I don't. I have my t-shirt collection is embarrassingly large, and it's got bird silhouettes and silly little sayings. And I have one that my in-laws bought me. It just says, "Wait, look, there's a bird." And in fact, Jeff and another partner of ours, they joke with me all the time because they're like, "Okay, well, what do you think about this?" And I say, "Well, I think we should maybe take those campsites." Did you hear that? And they're like, "No, hey, focus. What? Get back over here. Come here." Um, but it's ingrained in my DNA now.
It's
So
so
just
funny.
just one example. Birders are such a powerful and diverse group, and they're so much fun. They're big nerds like me, and it could be somebody just watching their feeders out the window, as you talked about, right? Just buying some bird seed, putting it in a feeder, and they're just watching out the backyard because it brings them joy. Or it could be somebody like me who I've been to all over the US. I've been to Honduras a couple times. I've been to Panama. I've been to Colombia. And those trips that's not inexpensive. So some of that is leaving the country, right? But just within the country, you're talking about 80 plus $billion. And so that's travel,
Wow,
it's
that's
lodging,
crazy.
it's optics, because binoculars and spotting scopes are not inexpensive. And it's things like, so small example, birding festivals happen all over the United States in sort of like birding hotspots, right? Here in Northwest Ohio, one of the biggest birding festivals in the world happens. And so in an area where maybe a few thousand people live for 10 days, roughly 30 to 40,000 people descend on this little tiny area and they stay there for this festival. It's called the biggest week in American birding. And just to watch birds, because migration is such that as birds come north, they hit the southern shore of Lake Erie and they look out at that big body of water and they're like, I think I remember this from the fall when I went by. This was quite a flight. I need to stop here. So it's a barrier to migration. I need to stop here. I got to eat a little bit. I need to take a little bit of a rest. Then we're going to get across that. We're going to go back home to Canada, do our nesting, and come back. So we're right in the middle of where three flyways come together. I'm getting technical on the birding stuff. Anyway, 30,000 people, 40,000 people all come to this little area. The economic
Yeah,
impact, can you imagine what that is for that little town? All the little tiny
yeah,
restaurants and mom and pops, and it's massive. Those
right.
festivals happen all over the US. I've walked the parking lot at Biggest Week and counted license plates from all 50 states. I've met people from New Zealand, South Africa, the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Canada, Mexico, Panama. The guides from South America actually come up and participate because they know that they're going to run into people that maybe want to go back to Central and South America on some of their trips. Um, that's just one slice. That doesn't account for people
Yeah.
who like to hunt, fish, shoot, um, and drive, just watch wildlife in general. Maybe not bird specific. I talk a lot about birds because that's my game. But
Right.
yeah,
I
the
think I think I'm sorry to interrupt.
please no,
I
please.
think I think we should come back and do this again and actually go through that report
Oh, I
and
would
talk
love
and
to.
highlight some things. I think the thing is, like you said at the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And when people are struggling to differentiate themselves, you also want to be cognizant of your ability to leverage what already exists, right?
Absolutely.
And it's so simple to do that when you just start thinking outside the box. I'll tell you one thing I did think about bird attraction for a campground because what I learned living in Pagosa Springs, which is in the mountains with the wilderness all around, is
Yeah,
I was attracting more bears than hummingbirds and more turkeys than like the flying birds. So you do have to be aware of what you're
you do.
doing and the
Yes,
consequences, especially if you're in the mountains or whatever. But leave that to the campground owners because they'll get educated and make sure you're safe and all of
for
that.
sure.
But yeah, I just had like a PTSD flashback of all the bears on my deck
Yeah, you definitely have to be careful with that.
because
And we didn't have bears, but I would certainly get people that were, they love the birds, they love to feed them. But if you put out 20 bird feeders, birds are messy eaters. They're gonna scatter that
Oh
stuff on
my
the ground.
gosh.
And so
Yeah.
we would have, Bob would come down and say, "Hey, Jerry next door has got 50 skunks at his feeder every night. I can't even come out. Is he,
Yeah.
can he clean it up?" And it's like, okay, that's okay. This is legit. I'll talk to Jerry, because we want him to feed the birds and love it. But
And
you have to,
raccoons.
and raccoons and
Raccoons are a
opossums
big
and
thing.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
All
And
the critters.
I love them all. I have had, I don't know how
Of
many
course
close
you do.
encounters with skunks, and I've never been sprayed once. So, and I don't want to jinx it, but I love them all, right? So build a feeding station. You might be feeding more than birds. Just be, to your point, be prepared for that. If you're going to build a feeding
It's
station, yeah, you might be feeding other animals.
yeah, it's a beautiful winter activity though. When
Hmm.
the bears are asleep and it's
Absolutely.
snowing and you see like 4 dozen birds just come in and start eating, and it's like it's so magical. Yeah, these simple things drive revenue
They sure
to
do.
your bottom line. So
They sure
this has
do.
been so much fun. You were a really fun guest to have,
Oh, thank
Greg, and
you.
we didn't even really have a plan. So I really appreciate you just popping on and spontaneously being you. And we'll have to do it again. And perhaps we could link that report or post it in the comments or something, and we'll come back and do a deep dive into that. I think that could be very valuable for everyone.
I
And
would
I
love to
just
do that.
Great. We'll definitely do it. I wish you a beautiful, wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in if you did. And I know you received a lot of value from Greg. Greg, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Michelle. You too. It's been a
Okay.
blast. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.